I'm your host, Grayson Brulte. Welcome to another episode of SAE Tomorrow Today, a show about emerging technology and trends in mobility with leaders and innovators who make it all happen. On today's episode, we're absolutely honored to be joined by Adam Gryglak, President, and Gary Newton, Vice President, Sales Business Development, AVL Mobility Technologies. On today's episode, we'll discuss the latest in internal combustion engine technology, hybrids, and the growth potential of diesel hybrid engines, along with hydrogen. We hope you enjoy this episode. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Grayson. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to be here.
It's great to have you here. Adam, it seems that there could be a resurgence in the internal combustion now with the potentially $7,500 tax credit going away. If that happens, how is the technology for ICE going to develop? Are we going to see larger investments, technological breakthroughs for ICE technology?
Yeah, absolutely. I think reality is that the standards that all the manufacturers have to meet, both relative to fuel economy, emissions, CO2 compliance, it's going to continue to drive, the need for efficiency improvements. With the EV mandates kind of shifting, the new administration maybe having a different perspective, there's absolutely regrowth in the internal combustion engine, both gasoline and diesel, relative to every small efficiency action that we could find. I expect that further turbocharging, further actions on smaller displacements, use of exhaust gas recirculation, and even combustion efficiency improvements, are going to be critical. Also on the mechanical, we have both mechanical and thermal efficiency gains that we need to get. So I'm expecting just traditional windage impacts on crank trains, valve trains are going to be very important. Then that also leads to the need to probably implement additional hybrid technologies that kind of took a back seat as the EV pushed. So I'm expecting a lot more development with hybrids, plug-in hybrids, where we leverage some of the battery technologies that have already been available. And then on the flip side, as our EV customers try to garner additional sales, the true traditional EV customers, they will probably be looking at range extenders to really get that aura of range anxiety out, to get them more comfortable with a full EV offering.
Well, a lot to unpack there. I'm curious. Efficiencies. How do you increase the efficiency of an internal combustion engine? Is it coatings? Is it platings? Is it some sort of software layer? How do you do that?
It's actually you are a smart man. That you've nailed it. I mean, it's a lot of little things, right? Efficiencies on friction. So people are looking at different ways of coating the various interfaces that they have. Less windage, again, I'll bring that up, right? Making sure that you use the littlest amount of lubrication to actually drive your overall system so that you're not pumping oil and churning oil. So every 1/10% is really crucial in the base engine environment. And you look at every element, right? Most organizations will Pareto out exactly each of those actions and find the technologies that they need to go forward with.
Gary, we're in a changing environment. It's clearly changing. There's been multiple media reports. There's been tweets. How has your customers' thinking changed on ICE? Has it been your phone's ringing? Okay, Gary, before the election, EV, and now it's like, Gary, we need ICE. We need ICE. How is their thinking changing?
Understood. Well, Grayson, I think the question you just posed had two parts, which is how are they thinking about it and how are they prepping for the changes that are coming? If I think about the way that we're approaching ICE, to Adam's point that he just brought about maximizing the ICE efficiency. I mean, when we're talking about squeezing every little ounce out of what you can get from a currently established ICE platform is going to be critical. And then figuring out how that ICE platform really connects to part of a hybrid system, which then takes you to the next step. These efforts are driven not only by the mechanical efficiencies, but also by what appears to be brand new mandatory regulatory requirements around emissions and the need for a stricter fuel economy. But then we also look at ICE in a second way, which is as a bridging strategy to electrification. Customers often view ICE as a complement to electrification, especially today, right? To develop an ICE program is extremely expensive. So how can we repurpose what's already on the shelf, get the most out of it, and buy us the time we need until we perfect or move into a better electrification. And better might not be the right word, but how do we get into more mature electrification? And then how are they prepping for the policy changes that are coming? I think if you look at it, ICE engines, I think it was Mark Twain that said, the rumors of my death are greatly exaggerated, right? So policies such as EU bans and the way California is going to deal with their population, those are forcing a rapid pivot into the space. But OEMs, in my opinion, are going to be able to squeeze that efficiency, value, and profit out of off-the-shelf solutions. That means customers are going to have a choice. And then that's going to buy us time until we get to maturity. So extending the life of the current programs, I think, are the first piece. And then pressure to shift to EV production. Again, we're facing regulatory pushes and not necessarily natural market forces. So I think you're going to see a Q4 blip as we see some of the sales for EVs tick up as we look at the sunset of some of those the tax credits you're going to get from EVs. As those go away, you're going to see this mandatory push to sort of buy them real quick. And then companies are going to transition over time a little bit better, and the natural market will take over. So you're still going to see the trend in EV sort of go up, but I think it's going to be a little bit more of a gradual trend than sort of the sharp push and tick up.
Gary, do you see a scenario sometime in the future where hybrid becomes the largest powertrain out there? And I'm combining plug-in, I'm combining mild hybrids. Do you see where the consumer overwhelmingly says, okay, we're going hybrid? Because for a lot of consumers, it's the best of both worlds.
Absolutely. And it really depends on which type of hybrid platform you're talking about. I mean, demand for hybrid tech is really the push right now because there is some anxiety to moving to an all-electric platform. There is an off-the-shelf proven tech. If we can push those two together, in the case of a plug-in hybrid, a PHEV, those are really kind of becoming the preferred hybrid type due to their sort of dual power source, if you will. And then the mild hybrids, right? Adapting a 48 volt MHEV for their low cost and their ability to improve efficiency. I think it's natural for people to be leaning into that space and sort of making that first step transition towards electrification through the hybrid route.
Adam, you said this earlier. Your nickname is Dr. Diesel, so the curiosity hat is on now. How do you develop a hybrid platform?
Oh, interesting question. How do you develop a hybrid platform? Well, I mean, ultimately, all the baseline requirements around the standards and what we want to get to are driving the technologies. I mean, most hybrid platforms are basically integrating the combustion system, the transmission, some form of motor interface that goes with that, right? And then using that as well as the regenerative braking system and the interfaces that go with it. As far as how do we develop it, just like we would develop any major powertrain interface or subsystem, right? We look at the technical requirements that the customers had. We looked at the current technologies that are available to us. And as everyone's aware, AVL has a broad depth across multiple technology platforms. One of our sincere advantages in this industry is that because of our global reach and our global customer base, we do a lot of research and development work in many of the subsystems, and we're allowed then to take that knowledge and integrate technical solutions for our customers.
And this is the curiosity, and you can tell me it's not true, but I'm curious. Could you ever make a diesel hybrid? Is that something that could ever be made, or the technology is just too different?
No, absolutely. The execution of the ICE engine, be it gas or diesel, is still there. Traditionally within the U.S. market, that's not been a prime contender, but in European markets and actually in some off-road applications, diesel hybrids are applicable.
Now the curiosity has staying on. Could that move to Class 6, Class 8 vehicles since a majority of those vehicles are diesel?
Absolutely, right? There just needs to be a business case and technology transition that drives us to that world. And I expect you will see diesel hybrid implementation in some sectors moving forward. When you look at EV technology for the small commuter, small car, something that you can charge more frequently, there's a really solid base there. When you get into the heavy towing industries, be it Class 6 or even Class 4 and 5 trailers, you're always going to see diesels, and we're going to have to continue to refine the efficiency of the diesel, but then supplement that with some form of hybridization to meet future legislative requirements, both from a emission compliance perspective as well as a fuel economy perspective.
Gary, could you see a diesel hybrid being driven from customer demand where you're getting a lot of inbounds and saying, hi, can you guys develop this for me? And that it starts to propel and open that market?
I don't know if I'm at liberty to say that we may or may not be seeing that today. So absolutely. I mean, when you think about the way that the technology comes together, it's a traditional engine coupled with an electric drive system, and you squeeze the two together. And I think to Adam's point a second ago, whether it's petrol or whether it's diesel, the concepts are basically the same. So we are seeing in this case right now a demand from some of the large overland trucking companies where they're starting to ask us for how can we put that technology together, not only as a bridge, but as a way forward while we continue to mature into either alternative fuels, including those like hydrogen, or electric platforms that might be able to help us reach the price points and ranges that we need to see, and especially in that application.
If you look at, I'm just going to use the Class 8, for example, you have the 80,000 pound limit, and one of the big hindrances outside of range for Class 8 electrification is the weight. Are you seeing any breakthroughs in battery technology from a hybrid perspective where it's a lighter battery so you're not losing a lot of that cargo that you can carry?
So what we're seeing is a constant evolution in the fuel cell and battery space where you are looking at not only, electrical efficiency, but you're also looking at packaging and you're looking at weight coming down considerably. And that's also bringing cost down with it as well. So we are seeing brand new battery technology. In fact, AVL is a leader in that space right now, pushing that into the space as well and making that available. So whether it's the natural market that's doing it and what's coming out of some of the things that we're seeing in China versus what's being developed here overland and with our critical customers here in the States, battery tech is constantly evolving. So yes, we're seeing weight, we're seeing packaging, and we're seeing efficiency.
Gary, AVL plays in multiple verticals, and to me, says, wow, I get to learn a lot from different industries and different use cases. Do you put that all into a blender as you're developing your products to learn from the various different stuff? And you do stuff in space as well.
Oh, it's a pretty big sandbox over here at AVL that we get to play in. And when you think about where our technologies are being used, I mean, just off the top of my head, I think about aerospace and the development of propulsion systems and emissions testing, simulation, thermal management. I think about marine. And by the way, the hybrid and electric play in marine, you can look around the space and see what's going on there. Digital twins, right? We can't always build physical prototypes. So how do we get the most out of upfront simulation tools to drive internal costs down and accelerate time to market? I think about rail, right? Rail sometimes gets cast off to the side, but I think electrified rail systems, mass transit, that's also a space AVL is critical in. Energy and utilities, renewables, industrial machinery, defense. And then it's last, but definitely not least, is the play in the new hydrogen economy and fuel cells. And if you cascade up and down that entire list that it has kind of rattled off, there's a lot of work that is cross-attribute between all the other industries. So yeah, we might be doing a marine application today, but there are some first principles and definitely some lessons learned that can be applied to any one of those other application spaces.
Adam, what do AVL technologies unlock for your customers? Because Gary elegantly stated, you're in a lot of industries.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the traditional mobility industry, I have to honestly say, we're also entering the energy sector now, right? Those fuel cells and hydrogen platforms are actually going to stationary type devices, power IT database, backup power support. So yeah, we're playing in a lot of different fields, and it's pretty broad. I think relative to how we unlock things for our customer, because we have such a wide network and a global network of projects and knowledge, it really comes down to being able to reduce the overall development time, get them to market, help them with some of the core research knowledge that we have to build their depth and strength it's not just us here in the North American market, right? We're playing in these fields across the world, and some of our needs are different. So we learn from those, but our depth and breadth is phenomenal. The organization is very nimble. We can respond quickly, and we've gotten significant feedback from our customers around the fact that we can share a lot of information quickly, and we can react quickly to their needs.
When you're reacting quickly to your needs, Adam, for your customers, you're moving fast, you're lowering the development time, the cycle time. What role does simulation play in that, in digital twins, to allow you to get to market much quicker for your customers?
It's significant. Most organizations continue to look for efficiencies in the way they engineer their products. Simulation is core to that. There are still many customers out there that have to use a large fleet of test beds or a large fleet of vehicles, and translating that into a simulation tool of some sort that's properly correlated, right? You need to have good correlation between your simulation technology and the real world environment. So that requires, some good, quote unquote, feeding database. So simulation is core. AVL's brand of simulation tools range the spectrum from base engine to, NVH equipment to chassis dynos to engine dynos, as well as actual full simulators that some of our customers have purchased, so that we can simulate the entire environment in a virtual space and replicate what's happening on the road.
AVL developed your sim platform in-house?
Yeah, if I could take that a step further, Adam, that's part of my core background, right? When you do talk about simulation,
Yep.
we're not simulating just to simulate. We're really simulating to drive the customer experience. So when the simulations are correlated and you take that data and you couple it with a core vehicle model and you put that into a simulator, you can experience the subjective evaluation of what your customers would be feeling with that vehicle without needing a physical prototype. And when you can really drive through that type of an evaluation and that type of a design process, you considerably shrink your time to market. And if you could start substituting physical prototypes at a considerable cost, I mean, you could talk any one of the OEMs, they'll give you a different cost range, but it's in the millions of dollars. If you can start chopping those out of your individual programs and driving forward 3-6 months faster to market, it's game on, right? That is really the end goal, to correlate that subjective experience to the data on the screen. And that's what the simulator does, but it only is fed when you have solid simulations, when you have correlated test data, and when you've got the experience of real people driving a real simulator that it's got to be above video game level, right? It's got to have some actual feedback. It's got to have steering components, but you put all that together, that's the game changer.
The Unreal Engine's great, but you're taking the Unreal Engine to the next level there. Are you taking real world data from different environments, winds, elements, dust, and putting that into the simulation platform so you can, if you want to use the term, reenact those different scenarios in a safe environment?
Absolutely. I mean, the real world testing that goes on out there, AVL supports many of our customers. We actually do that even for our own simulation analysis. But, it's real simple. Hard assets, fleets of vehicles cost lots of money to develop, prototype, engineer. Reducing the quantities is crucial. Being able to replicate that in a dynamometer or on a chassis roll, and then translating whatever data we generate back to the simulation tool, that interaction and connection is crucial. So you have to have all of it. It's just a magnitude, right? Try to do it as much as you can with limited real world assets to get the right answers.
Think about a virtual proving ground, Grayson. Think about digitizing the entire experience of what you would get of sending a vehicle, 3 engineers to a proving ground for a week, and then maybe only getting 2 days worth of test in because rain, snowed, whatever it was. So you lost something, or something got lost in shipping, or you didn't get the tires changed over in time. All that stuff goes away when you're driving it through simulation and then driving it through a simulator.
So let's hypothetical scenario. Let's just say I've got to put my diesel hat on again. You have a car in the simulator, and you have an internal combustion engine that's running on petrol. You have one that's running on diesel. Then you have a petrol hybrid, diesel hybrid, and electric. Can you run different modeling scenarios? So when you go to your customers and said, you give them a menu and say, here's all the test results for different types of engines?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the data that we collect from the real world experience, be it any of those test beds, we have the analytical tools then to basically show the comparisons, the differences, where those efficiencies came from, and we can parade all those efficiencies out for the customer, so they can make some judgments about what technology they like to go forward with or not. So scenarios, engineering scenarios or solution scenarios is a big part of, some of the consulting work we do to provide guidance on where to go next.
Characterize the core vehicle architecture once. And once you have that characterization, then do a virtual swap of whatever powertrain system or whatever ICE, diesel, electric you want to put in there. And it's all mix and match to find whatever the optimum is based on the target cascade for said platform. But do the work once on the core vehicle and then swap it out virtually as much as you need.
And that's scalable, which raises this question. Is the number one request or requirement of your customers efficiency? Is that why they're coming to AVL for efficiency?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? I mean, the demand, AVL's core business is driving propulsion, driving new mobility solutions. And what's driving the OEMs is the market demand and what the customer wants, but also the legislative requirements that are driving, being legal to actually sell those products. So efficiencies is critical, right? Almost all legislation is written around making sure the earth gets cleaner and greener. And as part of that, we've got to find the ways to execute that. And that could be from thermal efficiency, mechanical efficiency, but that can also be from evolving after-treatment technologies to help them.
I've talked to a lot of over-the-road trucking executives, and they're all very pro-hydrogen, but it comes back to the issue of where's the fueling infrastructure? That's what they talk about. Well, we're in the middle of Montana, Nebraska. They need it. When do you see hydrogen becoming a fuel that the over-the-road truckers will use, or what I'm hearing from them, until the fueling infrastructure is there, they're really not going to go for it?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. It's kind of parallel to the whole EV strategy that's existed a little bit, right? I have to say that the new administration may have a different tact on that, which we need to kind of watch that space. I will say that, earlier you mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act, right? The Inflation Reduction Act was absolutely an element of how do we build a hydrogen economy? How do we build a green hydrogen economy? How do we get the infrastructure out there so that, the trucking industry and whoever else can leverage a cleaner approach and a more efficient approach to applying that? It is something we're very active in. It's something that we're trying to build and grow. I expect it will. I don't think we know yet, depending on where the IRA goes under the new administration. One emphasis will be put towards kind of the green solution versus other hydrogen solutions. We're clearly watching that space very closely now. We're trying to understand it with, not only the government where it's headed, but also where our customers' heads are at. It is a space that will grow. It's just not clear exactly how quick and when.
And when it does grow, I agree at some point. I think it's going to be interesting to different geographies around the world. I think you'll see growth pockets, perhaps in Western Australia with the heavy duty mining. Perhaps you can put hydrogen there. When it grows, do you see hydrogen mostly being focused, Adam, on the commercial market rather than the passenger market?
I see it across both sides. I think the commercial side will adopt first. I think the passenger side will slowly or will quickly follow after that. But the demand for hydrogen solutions is growing as more and more industries are now pivoting towards seeing the benefit of not only lower overall cost, but achieving their, I think the term is decarbonization. Is that the buzzword of the day? But as they continue to achieve that, the demand across all these sectors is going to go up. Now, the issue that we're looking at right now is the supply and demand side. So who's going to adopt first is really depending on how we can supply it. And when you think about not only the generation, but the storage, the transportation, and the infrastructure. As fast as those grow is as fast as the demand grows. And then you get your chicken and the egg, right? But how do we grow those if we don't have demand? So I think we need to find a balance between those two. And I think when you look at the IRA, when you look at the hydrogen hubs that are being sort of peppered across the United States, at least looking at it from a local view, I think those are going to impact that hydrogen economy. To Adam's point a minute ago, I don't think you're going to stop it, but I do see maybe a more gradual slope towards it versus a sharp uptick.
To that point, you mentioned earlier how can we unlock the benefit for our customers? I mean, we spend a fair amount of time in this space globally. You mentioned Australia. I think the EU and Australia are probably a little bit more advanced in that space, taking on a little bit more depth. We're learning from that, and we will be applying a lot of those lessons back into the North American market, and we're touching every part. The reason I brought up stationary programs is it's just not mobility anymore for hydrogen. The hydrogen economy is actually into the stationary space and the energy space as well, and that whole infrastructure we got to kind of chicken and egg, but we kind of help. We're going to understand it with the rest of our partners and continue that journey.
When you want to understand stationary storage, whether it be for batteries or for hydrogen, do you build a prototype somewhere with your customer so you can get that real world data and then take that into simulation?
Absolutely. We can't expand on what projects we actively had, but you nailed it. We do have active programs in that space, but we can't really talk about them yet.
You can't talk about it yet, but there's a common denominator through this entire podcast, Adam. You're helping your clients stay ahead of new and emerging trends.
Correct.
How is AVL doing that to ensure that, to use the Gretzky term, your customers are skating to where the puck's going to be, not where it currently is?
Oh man, you hit a nerve with Gary there, for sure. So look, AVL traditionally spends 10 to 15% of its global revenue on research. We have, within every region, we have pockets of core research going on with partnerships we have with many of the universities in Europe. We're going to try to expand that type of approach here in the U.S. and Canada. That is one of our competitive advantages. We spend a good chunk of our revenue towards core research, and it's core research not so much in the traditional areas, but a lot into green energy. So having that leverage and knowledge and learnings, more than happy to share that with our customer base so that they can take that and industrialize it into the economy.
And if I could expand on that, Grayson, I mean, when you think about how are customers of AVL staying ahead of trends in mobility? First of all, by being customers of AVL, right? I got to put the pitch in there, right? We can't go without doing that. But we are in a unique position to take advantage not only of our local, but our global expertise and our wide depth of, almost 70 plus years of knowledge of what we've been doing in various spaces. And we like to think of ourselves and demonstrate to our customers that we are on the front edge of thought leadership. You see AVL in the space, you see AVL at the events, you see AVL on the stage, doing podcasts like this. Our customers are able to take advantage of that, connect to that, and we're able to help drive them to where the puck is going, right? We're skating to where the puck is going. And when you think about that type of expertise and that type of skill, as we look at what's going on at the OEMs right now, we're watching a little bit of a brain drain. We've seen mass retirements. We've seen downscaling of resources. They are going to need a partner that they can come to grab that expertise. And AVL is uniquely positioned to be able to do that because we are where they are and we're in the spaces that we're in. And, another way that we demonstrate that is, I got to put a plug in for Josh here, right? Every year we do a Reimagine Mobility event. This year it's slated for April 1st and April 2nd. But this is a gathering of not only AVL experts from around the world, but it's also a gathering of the thought leaders in the space. Forward-thinking people that are trying to figure out where mobility is going, how do we stay in front of it, how do we stay connected to it, and what are the innovations that are driving it. So by having events like that, by having the expertise that we have, we allow our customers to not only position themselves to remain competitive, but innovative in every possible way.
Okay, so you're spending 10 to 15% of your revenue on research. Where's electrification going right now?
Go ahead, Andy. You want to take the first crack?
Yeah, well, again, supply and demand, right? As the OEMs have maybe over-indexed on their plans, there is still some very, very good core work in EV. And I think we chatted a little bit about this earlier, specific to batteries, right? Battery chemistry is the secret sauce. And every manufacturer, be it a traditional pass car OEM or a commercial truck or wherever, battery chemistry is critical to the future of future efficiencies. EVs will continue to grow. They're just not going to happen at the pace that maybe somebody thought. And there is a core market. I kind of reflect a little bit on the power tool industry. You know, how many items in your garage are now battery powered versus gas powered? All right, pretty overwhelming, right? That transition will occur in the small vehicle market. Someday you might not be able to get a small car that's gas powered. It gets more difficult when you start getting in the 40,000, 80,000 pound GVW type environment. That technology is not efficient. So where's EV headed? It's going to continue. I think there's a smaller subset that we need to concentrate on. And for me, the smaller subset is how do we get battery chemistry and batteries more efficient and longer ranges in a smaller space? So that research, that work is going to continue. It will. It won't just happen at the magnitude or gravity that potentially was thought.
The garage is interesting. I'm just thinking this through. In the old days, you put the gas in the leaf blower. Now the leaf blower's battery, and then
right.
It's just all those things that you think about. And you're like, wait a second, that's obsolete. That's weird. That makes too much noise. Is that kind of Adam's spot on the garage analogy I'm going through?
I see that analogy translating. Seriously, it's translated in the small motor business. So not only is power tools, but you're going to see that transition to other segments where that makes sense from an attribute perspective. Look, I had a hard time giving up my gas leaf blower. It's electric now. I had a really hard time doing that. I wouldn't switch over to a electric power washer. I still needed my 3,100 PSI, gas engine. Sorry, I couldn't go there yet. But maybe 5 years from now, the market will dictate it for me. I won't be able to buy one.
The market is going to choose. And I think the term that we're looking for here is sort of creep, right? Over time. To take Adam's point, talk about the garage, right? You talk about the leaf blower and the lawnmower. Now look at the electric scooter, look at the electric bike. Harley Davidson has an electric division. I mean, when you think about where that's going, right? And then talk about Polaris and talk about all the off-road companies that now have these little side-by-side electric razors and electric snowmobiles. It is coming throughout mobility. And I think when you look at all of those different applications, the sum of lessons learned and maybe some of those smaller apps are going to play a significant role in passenger car, and then eventually, to Adam's point, about pushing up into large truck and over-the-road applications.
It's coming. It's just going to go at the market pace, not at a pace that was being dictated.
I think we need to kind of watch the European space, right? Because Norway is trying to be extremely aggressive. We'll see how that works out over time. Clearly the demands of the customer in the market here in North America are different, and we got to watch. We just got to watch the space and evolve it.
Yeah, I mean the EU, doesn't the EU have a 2035 ban or something on electric or on ICE engines? So maybe it's going to force it a little bit, but at the end of the day, I think the market needs to really dictate.
Yes, if you look at the EU, you have they're in, for all practical purposes, not a technical recession, but they're in a practical recession. In Norway, just think about Norway, what we have to watch. If it wasn't for Nordis, the world's largest sovereign wealth fund, they'd be in a lot of trouble because their economy is hemorrhaging. I don't know if you watched their migration data out of Norway. The wealth is leaving Norway, and it's going to leave them in a very particular place. If it wasn't for Nordis, their economy would be in a lot of trouble. But that's the economist in me, and I'm going to stay on the automotive side.
Yeah, but unfortunately, you brought up a good point. We have to watch those economies because they will dictate the market and they will dictate where we spend our time.
Yes, we're your global economy and we're interconnected, but inside of the global economy, there's economies within economies. And if you look at, and a lot of it comes down to fiscal policy. The UK's in a very bad position right now. The EU's in a bad position, but we're okay. And so it's really going to depend. But you have to look at everything. The common denominator across everything is change. Change is always going to happen. It's a core. Getting back to your core business, Adam, automotive software went from really bad to really good over the last decade. How do you see that changing over the next decade? Does it just continue to get better and better and better?
Yeah, it will. I mean, the many of the OEMs, especially for intellectual property, are bringing some of those services back in versus purchasing services. There's different trends with different groups. Clearly, I mean, I'm going to open up Pandora's box with artificial intelligence, right? What impact AI is going to have. There's big pushes, especially with European brands, German brands, where AI is going to be core to their DNA. It will be interesting to see how that transpires here. We AVL are actively watching that space, spending research in some of that space. AI clearly will drive different behaviors. I mean, just look at the impact AI has had on the stock market relative to some of the players in the chip market. So it is going to continue to evolve and get better. Like everything, right? Efficiency is going to be garnered in every segment. The rate at which software can be analyzed and tested on local beds is phenomenal, right? Computing speed is so quick compared to where it was just a year ago. And there's millions and millions and millions of routines run 24 hours a day to look for errors. And then, making sure that the customer experience is brought back into the product and then checked offline. It's going to continue to evolve. And I do expect AI is going to find its place, and it's going to be a big part of, that efficiency, the improvement, and the experience that you're going to get with your products, right? A couple of my kids, they're gamers, and just watching the evolution of the gaming experience has been incredible to watch I used to play with them now and what is available today.
It's truly changing. On the Alphabet's Q3 earnings call, Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Alphabet and Google, he made a public statement. 20% of the code written in Google last quarter was written by AI, and I was surprised that a lot more analysts didn't pick up on that. He said the financials, but that to me was a big tell sign. So I was like, okay, benchmark Q4. Are we at 25%, 26%, 22%? Because that's a big time. If you look at automotive, you take that efficiency. If you put it into traditional automotive, you can really increase efficiencies, because we're seeing, I'll remove their name, but we're seeing, unfortunately, what's happening with a very large European automaker now with their labor and their cost issues. And I saw yesterday their CEO of America resigned. So you have a lot of issues to increase the efficiency. From the consumer side with the AI, if that can become conversational in the vehicle, that's a whole nother ball game. As long as you don't charge to heat your seats, we're good there. There's a lot of stuff that we've learned. Adam, in your opinion, what does the future mobility look like?
That's a tough one. What does the future look like? I think the future looks like today. It's just we keep evolving it, right? We spent a lot of time in the traditional space of gas engines, diesels, hybrids. I think automated driving systems, right? Level 1, level 2 systems are currently available in the market today. Those are going to continue to grow to make it more pleasurable for the customer experience. I expect we're going to see more growth, clearly more growth there, right? The car I drove 3 years ago and the car I'm driving today completely behaves differently on the real world road. The green energy space, that is new frontier. AVL feels very strongly about making the world neutral when it comes to emissions and fuel. We want to help drive that vision for Professor List. We want to make sure that we drive and sell and evolve those technologies and then get them industrialized in the market. So we're going to touch every space. It'll be fuel cells. It'll be electrolyzers. It'll be hydrogen. We want that to enter the market. So I think we're going to continue down that path. Will there be new inventions that pop up next year or the year after that we want to continue to evolve? Absolutely. From an AVL perspective, I think one of the other areas that we we will be spending more and more time in is developing technologies for lunar programs, right? Space is something that the last administration and even the new administration is going to want to spend some time on. We've got active work in that area. We think there's a lot of opportunity in the commercial space to enter others that have exited, and that's another great place to evolve technology and then reapply it to back here. So
Space is coming.
yes, it is, and we're pretty geeked about it. We really think there's some opportunity. The business model on the space programs has changed, and it's entering the commercial phase. So because of that, there's more competition, more aggressive thoughts about how to do the work, how to engineer, how to press technology. It's great. Capitalism at its finest.
Well said. Your thoughts, Gary?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Grayson, it sounds like a different broadcast. I mean, we should get that scheduled, right?
Yes.
I mean, when you think about what the future of mobility is going to look like, I think it's going to wrap around three core pieces, at least down here on Earth, right? And that's going to be around connected, efficient, and sustainable, right? How do we move people and goods where they need to be, where they want to be, how they want to get there? But it's going to wrap around those three things. And whether it's sustainability through electrification, autonomous vehicles. I mean, we didn't even talk about, mobility as a service. We didn't talk about V to X or the Internet of Things, or I think we touched a little bit on digital twins. I mean, all the technology is sort of shaping, but I think they all boil down to those three core things, which is connected, efficient, and sustainable. So if you can push mobility any way you want it to go, as long as it addresses those three things, people will adopt it, people will jump on it. And you're seeing them adopt all types of things across the spectrum that are helping them to achieve those three things.
And at the core of this, the fuel, not rocket fuel, that's cool, but the fuel that's driving it is innovation and entrepreneurship.
Absolutely, it is, Grayson. Great point.
Yeah. Yep.
And I mean, just look to highlight SpaceX as they did the launches today. That's entrepreneurship at its finest. I mean, that's completely turned NASA on its head. If you look at the Starlink, you look at the boosters, and we're going to go to Mars hopefully in 2 years, and we're starting to see a whole new crop of individuals crop up in space. And it was interesting. I read a report this morning before we recorded. Morgan Stanley hosts a space investor conference every year. And this one analyst there said last year, 50%, plenty of room, no problem. This year, oversold, lines out the door. So the interest is there from the investor perspective, and hopefully that fuels the next great space race. And I will give a plug for a really great movie to our listeners if you're curious. The Right Stuff was a fantastic movie about space. So I gotta plug that, put my pop culture hat on and plug that there. Gentlemen, this has been fun. We could do a whole nother episode on space and
we will.
Yes.
We were having fun, and we want to expand more on it. The other movie you guys need to see is Fly Me to the Moon, the most recent one. It's also pretty good relative to what's going on in the market today.
And there's a lot of good going in the market. Gentlemen, this was a super fun conversation. It's frankly an awesome conversation. As we look to wrap up for today, what would you like our listeners to take away with them? Gary, we'll start with you, please.
I think the biggest thing I wanted people to take away is you think of AVL as a traditional powertrain or engine company. We have grown, we have adapted, we have diversified, just like our customers are doing. And building on those strong roots, we can continue to stay connected. We can continue to drive your innovation, whether it's big data, autonomous, electrification, hydrogen. I could keep naming the list, right? But AVL is not your dad's powertrain company anymore, right? We've grown, we've expanded. And I just ask you to consider 30 minutes with us to understand how we can support you in the future. And that would be my concluding statement.
Wow, that was. I'm glad you're the sales lead. And I've got both sides of the shop. But listen, just AVL, our owner, Professor List, really wants to see a neutral, global, compliant economy when it comes to emissions and CO2. We really cherish that belief. We want to help all our customers get to that point. Clearly, business is going to drive that. The market demand is going to drive it, but we're going to push the extremes, right? And the reason we need to enter some of these new spaces that Gary mentioned, like aerospace, potentially aircraft, our traditional models, automotive, autonomous vehicles, ADAS-based systems, efficiencies around, the software that we talked about earlier. These are all areas that we've got very good backgrounds in. We can teach the industry a lot, and we want to be part of that solution.
I'll summarize this way: push the extremes and just build products to build the future. Today is tomorrow, tomorrow is today, the future is AVL. Adam, Gary, thank you so much for coming on SAE Tomorrow Today.
Thank you, Grayson. Glad to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time, and awesome.
Thank you for listening to SAE Tomorrow Today. Be sure to join us next week as we discuss industrial solutions for decarbonizing supply chains.
SAE International makes no representations as to the accuracy of the information presented in this podcast. The information and opinions are for general information only. SAE International does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast.